basically, what you want to do, like I said, is you want to start off with a natural fiber. And something that's firm but doesn't ravel a lot. Then you decide what your pattern is going to be. Now I learned this because I tested it out, and I found the best way to practice was on a piece of fur. Because I found that I was using a clear ruler and I was getting myself confused. I had to train my eye that if I needed this much space between the fold, this is how wide the tooth needed to be. The tooth you have to measure accurately so that your teeth are sharp. And they got the name shark's teeth because this lady in So Beautiful magazine decided they looked like the teeth of a shark. And because they have rows and rows of teeth. But anyway, what you do is you first are going to mark your fabric with a line where you want your tuck to be, and your tuck is the basis for how long your tooth is. So if you have a 1/2 inch tuck, then that tooth will be a 1/2 inch at the longest point. If you want a bigger one, the tuck needs to be bigger. And in the instructions, I've told you the width of the tuck times 3 is how long you need to do if you're going to do more than one row. So like if you had all these rows, you need like a 1/2 inch, you need 1 5/8 inches between each line. And one of the things you need to do is, this is my mantra, test, test, test. Frixion pens, water-soluble pens, but the thing about water-soluble, a lot of them sometimes will stay if you hit them with an iron. And one of the things is you're going to be ironing steps in between. So make sure your mark, whatever it is you're using for your mark, comes out. Frixion pens work wonderfully if you remember what it is the color, which is like a gel, and it has a binder in it. But if you wash it out, it doesn't come back. But that's why test, test, test. So anyway, it's a matter of test because you have to mark a lot. I love Material Magic. I brought this bottle back from Puyallup. I went there purposely to find out about it. I met the lady that invented it, and she's absolutely lovely. And this is a product that makes your fabric become like it has a stabilizer. I know Bernina carries it, and several other places carry it here locally. But what you do, and it needs to be a natural fiber, you spray it on your fabric. Or what she tells you to do is pour some in a plastic bag and put your fabric in there and squish it around. The reason she tells you that is because then what you don't get in your fabric, you can pour back in the bottle. I don't ever do big things, so I just spray it on my fabric. You let the fabric get almost dry, and then you iron it, and it becomes like a piece of stabilizer. And it's stiff, and for this project, it works beautifully. What I did is I marked my first line, and then the second line. So this particular version is 3/4 of an inch. So 3 times that makes it like 2 1/4. Okay. So there's 2 1/4 inches between this line and this line. So my tuck is going to be 3/4 of an inch. Okay. You take that 3/4 of an inch and you stitch right on your line. And you want to press so that it's nice and crisp. That's why you need to test to make sure if your iron goes over a water soluble, it's not going to make it stay. Because some of the marks from those pens, if you heat it, it will stay in your fabric. Okay, so now you've got your tucks and you want to make all your tucks. Then what you want to do is begin to mark for your teeth. Remember, where there is a clip, there will be a hole, because the fabric gets folded away from that clip, so that makes the hole open up. Okay, now if you need your design centered, you want to mark a center line and put 3/4 of an inch on each side of your center line and make a mark. Those marks will then be clipped, and you will clip through the fabric up to the stitching, but not through the stitching. Okay? Then what you do is, and you only cut 1 row at a time. Okay, so you're going to flip everything out of the way. You're going to take the first clipped piece and you're going to tip it up, and that makes sure you've clipped all the way to the stitching. Then you fold back the corner so that the piece is even with the stitching line, your raw edge, and it'll be a point. And you do the other side. Can't do it upside down. Okay, so now you have it looking like that. So now you're going to fold it down, and I didn't use glue or anything. I'm kind of anti-glue. You can use a washable glue stick, and it can be put on the little corners so that it'll hold still for you. But with this in the fabric, it stays. I just love it. So then I just pinned it down, went to the next one, went across the row, and then what you do, stitch. You want to make sure your stitch, a zigzag, this one is a sampler. I used all kinds of different stitches. You want to stitch right along the stitching line with a zigzag. You want to have the needle be just to the left of the stitching, and the swing of the right side goes onto the tooth, because you want those raw edges to be caught.
So is that?
It can be a hem stitch, it can be a zigzag. I did a hem stitch, I did a zigzag, I did a feather stitch, and I did this star thing. The thing about this is then you can do other things with it.
Okay.
I'll tell you, the one in the book, it tells you that the squares are one of the easy ones. I thought they were one of the hardest ones to do, because I couldn't get them to match. They're not as even as I wanted them to be. And all that is a big tuck that you flatten out. And then you stitch down the center of this big tuck, and you do your clips so they meet, and then you fold just exactly like I showed you. And so on the back it looks the same, but I had a hard time getting the squares to be the same on both sides. The one I liked the best was this one, and that's just a tuck, which is like all the rest. It's just you flip your point one way or the other, back and forth, and then you stitch. The other one, this one here, is pink. And what that is I made the tuck, and I took a piece of ribbon and pulled it through before I made my clips. So then I folded it just like before, but it gave it a little color. Then I thought, like the little dress in the picture. What you do is, and I stiffen this is just quilting cotton I had in my stash, and what you do with this is you take another color fabric, and when you have figured out how big your tucks are, well, one of the tuck folds is another color. So then you have to add seam allowances. So it gets a little higher math. What you're doing is you're inserting strips of fabric
Right.
into your colored fabric or your printed fabric, and then you turn them into tucks. And so then you do the teeth exactly the same way. And so then you have the color showing behind, and all it is it's a little bit, you know, more fabric there. And that I used a little wider zigzag so it would catch.
So you only had to add one width of the contrasting color?
You add one width of the tuck plus a half an inch, so you have your seam allowance.
Yeah, but you didn't have to do that for each tuck, each row of tucks, you just.
Every time you want a color, you do.
Yeah. So you could alternate colors.
Exactly. The other thing, and I didn't do it, is you can take the tucks, and before you sew them down, if you had them going, I don't know how else to describe it, at each other, you know, so the points of the teeth were touching this way, you could put the color or a piece of ribbon under there. There's a whole lot of possibilities. Now, the ones you see in some of the pictures, they have long places where there aren't teeth. All that is you just didn't clip there. It has to be the same length. You would leave a space, like if this was going to be a long bar, like you saw in some of the pictures, you just wouldn't clip there. You would leave that as a plain space without marking. And so, like I said, wherever there's a clip line is a hole. And if you think about it that way, every time you make a clip, you've made a space that you could put color or something behind.